His face is twisted into a crazed smile, showing no remorse for his actions. Years later, Heichi is released from an institution, now appearing as a frail old man in a wheelchair. An angry crowd surrounds him, calling him a devil and demanding justice for their lost family members. The hand of the person pushing the wheelchair tightens its grip, showing a sense of determination. This man introduces himself as lawyer Bayan Hojul, the one who secured Heichi's release. Reporters immediately swarm the young lawyer, demanding answers from him. One reporter aggressively questions Hogel, asking why he would defend such a monstrous person. The lawyer calmly explains that his professional duty prevents him from creating false victims. Suddenly, an egg hits him in the head, thrown by a protester who calls him a devil's accomplice. With yolk dripping down his face, the lawyer silently considers the consequences of angering someone like him. He quickly pushes the wheelchair away, leaving the furious crowd behind as they shout insults at him. He reflects on how this case was so infamous that even the biggest law firms had rejected it. Later, the two of them are seen speeding away from the scene in a luxury car. The old man drops his weak act, laughing maniacally at how easily he fooled everyone with fake tears. The chairman thanks his lawyer for the hard work and offers him a party as a reward. But the older man's mood changes, and he looks at the lawyer with a curious expression. He asks Hojul how he managed to block all the incriminating evidence that was piled up against him. The lawyer simply states there was no evidence, and then asks if the chairman knows how evidence can become a problem. At that moment, Hojul looms over the older man with a threatening look. The chairman bursts into laughter, impressed by the lawyer's quick wit, and offers him a job on his new legal team. Hojul tells the chairman to sleep well for the night, smiling as he promises to visit again soon. Later that evening, in a high-rise building, a woman comments on how the chairman got more muscular after leaving prison. He is in bed with two women, bragging about having worked out all day just for them. Suddenly, one of the women stops him, saying she thinks someone is outside, but he dismisses her concerns. The girl insists, her eyes wide with shock as she tells him to look again. The lawyer, Bayan Hojul, casually appears from behind the curtains, greeting the chairman and noting that he's working hard. Stunned, the chairman points out that they are on the 34th floor, making a simple visit impossible. He frantically asks how his lawyer got there, but Hojul calmly reminds him of his promise to visit soon with a new request. The older man argues that their case is over, but Hojul approaches him, saying he forgot to mention one detail. While putting on black gloves, the lawyer clarifies that this request is not for him as an attorney, confusing the chairman. He scoffs, warning the young man that he has chosen the wrong person to mess with. He grabs a nearby katana, making a thinly veiled threat about a dog that gets out of line. The man, now revealed as Chairman Park, a skilled swordsman, stands ready for a fight. Hojul simply addresses the chairman by his title, adjusting his glasses with a gloved hand. He begins to recount a famous saying that is well known in certain circles. As he speaks, he opens his backpack, explaining that being skilled with blades is only considered third-rate. The chairman grows nervous, demanding to know what he is planning as Hogel continues, stating that handling all weapons is second-rate. A look of dread crosses Park's face as he remembers a story about someone who could kill with octopus tentacles. He explains that a truly first-rate person can use anything in the world as a weapon. The chairman screams, challenging the second-rate lawyer to see if his blade is faster than an octopus. Hojul calmly asks what the older man is talking about. He then pulls a shotgun from his bag, revealing that he is actually third-rate. Panicked, the chairman drops his sword and pleads with him to talk, reminding him that he is a lawyer, not a killer. Hogel holds the weapon steady, confirming that he is both a lawyer and a killer. He points the shotgun, introducing himself simply as a garbage collector lawyer. The scene shifts as the narration begins to explain the lawyer's past. He starts by describing a place called the Glory Club, which advertises itself as a charity that serves warm meals to the elderly. On the surface, it appears to be a normal volunteer organization for humanity, but behind the scenes, its members also provide another service. Hojul explains that he used to be one of their paid volunteers, ranked as a C-grade member in their hierarchy. He recalls questioning his future, feeling that even with his best efforts, he could only ever reach B grade. After a fight, he lay on the ground defeated, accepting that C grade, rank 16, was his absolute limit. He began to think about leaving a job where he could be killed at any moment. In one instance, he wakes up just as forensic workers are zipping him into a body bag, forcing him to shout that he's not dead. One of the surprised workers casually tells him he should have said something sooner. He wonders if he can even switch careers, thinking his knife skills might only be good for a job at a sushi place. A nearby advertisement for a beauty model catches his eye, but he quickly dismisses it. He was looking for a true life-changing opportunity to escape his current path. An ad for a law firm on a city billboard gives him an idea, but to his surprise, he discovers that he possesses a talent he never knew he had. It turns out he has a natural gift for studying, what he calls a study brain. He realizes that obtaining a license to practice law is much easier than training to be an eliminator. With the money he earned as a killer, he opens his own law office, convinced he will finally make easy money. However, his life falls apart when he goes 5 months without a single client, leaving him broke and hopeless. Just as he considers giving up while standing on a bridge, he receives an unexpected call for a case with a huge fee. This new opportunity leads him to a heavily guarded correctional facility. A prison guard escorts him to a consultation room, where he is about to meet his mysterious client. Inside, he finds Joe Duchan, an infamous gangster whose case had been rejected by every other lawyer. The inmate casually asks why he was so late, questioning if he even wants to make money. Hojul slams his hands on the table, demanding the gangster take back his words, but Duchan challenges him. The lawyer says he will tolerate it 3 times, but the inmate taunts him, asking what happens after the 4th. The gangster smirks, calling him a pathetic little wonker, completely underestimating the man in front of him. Without warning, Hojul stabs his pen through Duchan's hand, pinning it firmly to the table. He then lunges across the desk and grabs the shocked inmate by the throat. Leaning in close, he coldly reminds the gangster that he has spent his life slicing throats, just like his. Terrified, Duchan begins to cry and apologize, begging for forgiveness as he struggles to breathe. The lawyer warns him that a brat like him should never talk down to adults. Still shaken, the inmate looks up, confused by the sudden and violent turn of events. The gangster asks what the lawyer will do if he doesn't hold back. Hojul forces a smile, claiming he's never even hurt an ant, but silently vows to destroy the gangster one day. Duchan then asks if he will get out, but a nearby guard tells the lawyer that the case is impossible to win. The guard explains that Duchan was caught on CCTV hitting a man with his car and then abandoning the body. The inmate spits, dismissing the evidence and reminding Hojul that his job is to make it disappear. The lawyer is told that nothing can be done unless the victim's family agrees to a settlement. Duchan confidently orders his lawyer to go secure the settlement, completely ignoring the moral dilemma. Later, Hojul walks through a dilapidated neighborhood, thinking this work is just as dirty as his old job. He reaches the victim's house, exhausted, and doubts that anyone would agree to a settlement with their parents' killer. But he steels himself, convinced that after 15 years as a killer, getting a simple signature should be easy. A young man opens the door and coldly tells him to get lost, but the lawyer just cheerfully responds. Hojul immediately drops to his knees, begging the young man Jihu to hear him out, but Jihu tells him to leave again. He desperately presents the settlement papers, revealing a massive sum of 10 billion won. The lawyer acknowledges the tragedy of the father's death, but reminds the young man that he still has a life to live. He explains the money will be his as soon as he signs, but Jihu interrupts him with a question. The youth asks the lawyer if he would sign the papers if he were in the same situation. With tears streaming down his face, Jihu asks how he could forgive the man who killed his father. Hojul is left speechless, unable to answer when confronted with the raw emotion of the question. At that moment, the front door bursts open as someone shouts Jihu's name. 2 intimidating men walk in, and one Wu Tazik tells the young man it is time to pay his debts. Jihu stares at the settlement papers on the floor, thinking that this scene feels all too familiar. Jihu insists he never borrowed money, but the thug grabs him, demanding payment. Hojul tries to intervene, asking if they can talk it out, but the men question who he is. The lawyer puts on a friendly act, claiming he's just a random passerby. He then tries to leave awkwardly, but the bandits mock his appearance. The young man watches the lawyer leave with a conflicted expression. Later, Hojul is on the phone with his client, explaining that the victim's family is unwilling to settle. Duchan threatens him, but the lawyer confidently assures him that opening people's hearts is his specialty. Back at the house, the thugs look down at Jihu, mocking his apparent weakness. The young man stands his ground, holding a small blade as he prepares to defend himself. One of the men locks the door, welcoming the confrontation, and even offering his stomach as a target. Tazik grabs the young man, saying that no one will be coming to help him now. The thug then grabs Jihu by the hair, warning him that messing with adults can be fatal. Suddenly, Hogul's voice is heard from the window, apologizing for the interruption. He explains that he left the settlement papers behind, and the thugs are shocked to see him still there. He points to the documents on the floor and asks if someone could pick them up for him. The lawyer desperately reaches through the barred window, but he can't quite grasp the papers. As Tazik grabs his arm, he stabs the thug's hand with the pin, causing him to cry out in pain. Enraged, the thug lashes out, questioning if the psycho is really trying to fight back with a blade. He kicks the young man to the ground, knocking him out with a single blow. Tazik stands over the unconscious youth, declaring that kids like him only learn their lesson after a beating. The thug scoffs at the threat, confident that no police will ever arrive to help. In a flash, Hojul crashes through the window, delivering a powerful flying kick directly to the thug's face. The impact sends shards of glass flying as the lawyer's foot connects squarely with the larger man's jaw. Jiu, still on the floor, looks up in absolute shock at the sudden turn of events. The lawyer lands gracefully while the thug crashes to the ground, completely taken by surprise. Hojul calmly stands up and begins to list their crimes, starting with home invasion and its legal penalties. He then moves on to illegal debt collection, citing the law against using fear or harm to collect money. The other thug lunges at him with a knife, telling him to shut up, but the lawyer is unfazed. He easily blocks the attack and finishes explaining the penalties, which include heavy fines and imprisonment. The thugs attempt to overpower him, with one grabbing him from behind, while the leader orders the attack. The larger man rushes forward, ready to strike the lawyer while he is being held, but Hojul breaks free with an elbow strike and sends the leader staggering back with a powerful kick. He continues his assault with a series of quick, brutal strikes against the stunned opponent. While fighting, he calmly lists their next offense, unlawful confinement, citing the specific criminal act. He punctuates his legal lesson with a hard punch, explaining the definition of the crime. Each blow is accompanied by a detail of the law, as he mentions the fines they will face. He finishes the combination with a devastating final strike, stating the 5-year prison sentence. With both thugs defeated, the lawyer stands tall, his professional demeanor unshaken despite the fight. Jihu can only stare in stunned silence, completely in awe of what he has just witnessed. Hojul smooths his hair back, complaining that the brawl has ruined his expensive haircut. Standing over the two unconscious men, the lawyer remarks that their threats and extortion mean nothing to him. He calculates their fines, then takes cash from a wallet, calling it a settlement for the beating he gave them. He reveals he recorded their crimes through the window and smugly offers them legal counseling in the future. He then turns to the stunned youth and hands him the money he just took from the thugs. The lawyer tells him to be careful, give his father a proper farewell, and says he will take care of the criminals. But Jihu calls out to him as Mr., which causes the lawyer to stop with a look of clear annoyance. The young man asks if he is really a lawyer, prompting an explosive "I am" from Hojul. Jihu expresses his confusion, and the lawyer awkwardly tries to explain that he is a lawyer, just not a Mr. The youth calls him Mr. once more, and the lawyer recoils in dramatic frustration. Jihu then calmly states that he wants to hire him, which catches the older man completely by surprise. The young man holds out the stack of cash, ready to make a deal. He then makes a serious request, asking the lawyer to kill Joe DeChan, the man who murdered his father. The boy firmly states that he wishes to hire the man's services, which catches the lawyer completely off guard and surprised. In his hands, the young man holds a thick wad of 50,001 notes, showing that he is serious about the payment. The boy hands over the money while asking him to eliminate Joe Duchin because he was responsible for taking his father's life. Startled by the request, the lawyer immediately refuses, saying that's what the police are for, and quickly announces that he's leaving. The young man remains motionless, clutching the money tightly as he watches the refusal of the one who seemed to be his only hope. Trying to escape through the broken window, the protagonist realizes how ridiculous he looks and decides he needs to hide his embarrassment. He makes up a flimsy excuse, saying he took the wrong turn, and tries to act naturally in the face of the embarrassing situation. The man straightens up and walks away, looking stiff, while thinking to himself that he managed to disguise his mistake very well. Suddenly, he stops in his tracks because a brilliant and lucrative idea has just crossed his mercenary mind. The former assassin wonders how he hadn't thought of that before, since the opportunity was right in front of him. The plan is starting to take shape, and the first step would be to secure the money from the settlement so the boy can finalize this legal part. He would then defend the criminal in court, thus ensuring he would receive his hefty fees as a lawyer. Finally, he would use the money the boy received to accept the assassination contract and eliminate the criminal after all. The realization that he can profit twice from the same case leaves the protagonist ecstatic and with shining eyes. Completely changing his posture, he turns to the boy and, in a serious tone, asks him to wipe away his tears now. The lawyer extends a checkered handkerchief to the young man and formally addresses him as a client, accepting his services. With a confident smile, Bayan Hojil promises that he will eliminate the target cleanly and efficiently, as requested. The young man stares at the man, completely bewildered by this sudden change in attitude and morality. Later, we see the boy in front of the lawyer's office, and the place looks more like a den of criminals than a serious firm. Even though he's scared, he enters the dark hallway, but freezes when he hears cries of pain and sounds of fighting. Screams of agony and sounds of blows echoed down the hallway, coming directly from inside the lawyer's office, frightening the boy. Jiwoo freezes instantly at the thought of someone being brutally murdered inside and considers how dangerous the situation is. Judging by the shadow on the door, it appears the man is mercilessly beating someone while the victim desperately begs for their life. Realizing what he's gotten himself into, the boy decides he needs to cut ties immediately and run away before it happens to him too. But his conscience speaks louder, and he shouts, demanding an end to the violence, while dialing emergency services on his cell phone. The sudden scream makes the lawyer stop what he was doing instantly and look in surprise towards the office entrance. Jiwoo holds his cell phone up like a shield, warning that the police are already on the line and that he'd better not try anything funny. Looking into the man's face, the young man is absolutely certain that he is just another greedy and violent thug like the others. However, the supposed victim shouts that he is just a patient, and the boy realizes that the lawyer was actually hitting an old TV. Jiwoo is confused when he realizes he was about to call the police, just because the man was trying to fix the device at the scene. The young man lowers his cell phone, completely embarrassed and looking dumbfounded, realizing the huge blunder he just made in front of him. Laughing at the situation, Hojil calmly explains that the television is old and only works by being aggressive in order to get a signal. To break the ice, he invites the young man inside and offers him a hot drink as a reward for having come from so far away. Jiwoo looks at the cup and notices that the lawyer added 2 sachets of extra strong coffee to the mixture as a gesture of generosity. Holding the paper cup, the boy politely thanks the host for his kindness, even though he is still somewhat suspicious. He points out that the lawyer is drinking the fancy coffee from the coffee shop, while he served the cheap coffee to the visitor. But Hojil changes the subject. Putting the jokes aside, Bayan sits down and asks with a smile if they can finally get down to business. The lawyer puts on his glasses and warns that before killing the target, they first need to get the criminal Joe Duchin out of jail. Hojil points upwards and builds dramatic suspense, saying there's a gigantic problem with this release plan. He projects the criminal record onto the wall and explains that the criminal was too careless, leaving obvious evidence of his crimes. The lawyer becomes utterly desperate when he realizes that getting that criminal out of jail is a virtually impossible mission. Pulling at his hair, he laments that his perfect plan to profit twice from the same client is crumbling right at the first stage. Hojil lists serious crimes such as drunk driving and concealing a corpse, stating that even the money from a plea bargain doesn't solve these issues. To make matters worse, security cameras kindly recorded every step of the crime, making the defendant's guilt all too obvious. The case is so well protected and full of evidence against the criminal that, according to him, not even the president of the country could exonerate him. Concerned about the impasse, the boy innocently asks what they can do to overcome this difficult situation. Jihu comments that in movies, lawyers often break into places and tamper with evidence by asking if the man would do the same. Laughing at his naivete, Ban replies that it's just fiction and that he's just a lawyer, not a movie secret agent. Suddenly he freezes mid-sentence because the boy's words have just ignited a gigantic light in his mercenary mind. The lawyer stands there, speechless, processing the absurd yet incredibly brilliant idea he just received for free. His eyes widened in shock as he realized that the solution to the problem had been in that completely illegal suggestion all along. Excited, Hogel grips the young man's hands tightly and shouts, asking if the boy isn't actually a hidden genius. The young man is completely confused by the sudden compliment, unable to understand how his silly question could have caused so much joy in the lawyer. The man explains that if everyone says the evidence is perfect, all you have to do is make it disappear to create reasonable doubt. If the evidence mysteriously disappears, he could argue in court that there were serious flaws in the police investigation. Even if the crowd shouts, calling the defendant a demon, the lack of physical evidence will force the judge to declare him innocent due to lack of proof. With a malicious smile, he concludes that without concrete evidence, the client is safe, no matter how terrible the crime may have been. Combining his lethal skills as a former assassin with his legal knowledge, falsifying and destroying evidence will be child's play. The scene shifts to elite prosecutor Han Jungbi, who takes on the case and immediately confronts the lawyer. Byun bids him farewell with a mocking greeting at the office door as the prosecutor leaves. The sun begins to set over the commercial building where the office is located, and the day draws to a close with an air of mystery. Suddenly, the boy bursts into the room shouting for the lawyer with great urgency in his voice, as if something serious had happened. Breathless, he says he just heard the news about the case and is completely agitated, while the lawyer remains calm. The young man invades the man's personal space and excitedly asks if all of that is really true, even while staring him up close. The excessive proximity makes the lawyer uncomfortable because the young man is practically glued to him and invading his privacy. Using only one finger on the boy's forehead, Hojul asks him to step back and give him some space to breathe. Regaining his composure, the protagonist stands up, straightening his suit, which was crumpled in the confusion, and asks the young customer to remain calm. With a mysterious air, he asks if the customer likes those movies that have a surprising ending and a big plot twist. Walking over to the computer, Hojil draws the young man's attention to something important he discovered on the laptop screen. On the screen, we see the security camera footage that the lawyer had mentioned earlier, and he asks if the boy noticed the detail. The lawyer points to the monitor and asks Jihu to look carefully at the writing on the traffic sign that appears in the video. The boy frowns and squints, trying to understand what is so special about those bright letters on the sign. The image focuses on the sign, indicating the distance to the tunnel, but the secret the lawyer found lies in the vehicle's position. Hojil begins a mechanics lesson by explaining that cars have springs under the chassis for support and shock absorption. He explains that the vehicle's height changes subtly and adjusts depending on the weight it is carrying at that exact moment. Returning to the video analysis, he warns that the truly crucial part of solving the crime and changing the game begins now. Based on the shift in weight on the axle, the lawyer deduces that there was a third person inside the car besides the defendant, Joe Duchan. This would indicate that shortly after the accident, the real driver and the criminal switched places to cover up for the true culprit. Confidently, he admits that for now, it's just a theory based on physics, and that they need to confirm it soon. Giving a thumbs up, he He boasts that the boy did well to hire a lawyer. Night falls over the city, illuminating the neon signs of the commercial building that houses the protagonist's peculiar law office. Outside, the boy shouts, calling for the lawyer in a tone that mixes urgency and indignation at the latest news. Jiu storms into the room, furious because he just learned that his father's killer has been released, and he can't believe this injustice. Desperate, the young man steps forward, questioning how that criminal managed to escape a life sentence and demands an immediate explanation. Maintaining his usual calm, Bion places his hand on the boy's chest and gently asked him to step back and not worry so much. Ignoring the customer's outburst, the man turns to the bookshelf, searching for a secret mechanism among the encyclopedias. With a technical push, the bookcase slides to the side, revealing a hidden passage that leaves the boy speechless. Inside, there's a full arsenal of firearms and knives, showing that he's far from being an ordinary, defenseless lawyer. But Jiu is unimpressed by the weapons and shouts, asking what the real plan is to catch the culprit now that he's free. Once again, Hojil demands physical space by pushing the boy's forehead and begins to explain his strategy in a theatrical and exaggerated manner. Pointing to a whiteboard, he explains that the target's gang operates like criminal cells spread throughout the city. To find the real culprit behind the hit and run, they'll need to be bold and take down the entire organization all at once. The boy notices that the drawing is too childish and asks if the lawyer did it, but the lawyer brushes it off, telling him not to worry about it. The idea of attacking an entire gang full of assassins seems crazy, and the young man is incredulous at the lawyer's suicidal proposal. Smiling confidently, Bon assures the young man that he has everything under control and asks him to trust in his skills as a former hitman. He narrates that sometimes he needs to be invisible and fluid like water, while the image shows someone wearing a motorcycle helmet. His eyes show total focus as he reveals himself to be a master of disguise, capable of infiltrating any place unnoticed. The scene shifts to the facade of a luxurious Chinese restaurant, where the gang is gathered to celebrate their boss's release. Surrounded by his tattooed henchmen and feasting on the finest food, Joe Duchin laughs loudly, mocking justice and feeling untouchable. The criminal looks at his cell phone with a smile, saying that there are a lot of idiots on the internet. Suddenly, the gang leader remembers the bruised face of someone important in his illegal business, a certain VIP from the chat group. The image shows a man kneeling, wearing only underwear, with a swollen face and bruises all over his body after a beating. The on-screen captions explain that VIP stands for Pathetic Idiot Victim, showing the utter contempt the criminals have for him. The kneeling man cries and desperately begs for the return of his money, saying it was his life savings. Laughing at someone else's misfortune, Joe Duchin mockingly says that he didn't steal anything, and that the man invested knowing the risks, because he wanted to. The mobster throws in the victim's face that she was the one who emptied the safe and gambled everything away, so the blame for the loss lies solely with her. While calmly smoking, the bandit even compliments his henchman's English, showing a complete lack of empathy for the suffering of others. Joe Duchin continues his cruel speech, saying that there are many suckers in the world, ready to throw money away without thinking. One of the henchmen mentions that he heard the boss gave 1 billion won to the son of the man who died in the car accident. The criminal laughs loudly, saying that the dead old man was incredibly lucky because he would never have managed to amass so much money in his lifetime. Duchin boasts that he can recoup that amount in a short time, simply by scamming a few more idiots in his investment group. The thugs are sucking up to their boss, calling him an angel of charity for giving so much money to the son of the accident victim. Pleased with the compliments, Joe Duchin curiously asks how the lawyer managed to get him out of a case that seemed lost from the start. At that moment, one of the subordinates announces that an unexpected visitor has arrived, interrupting the criminals' celebration at the restaurant. The boss is confused by the interruption since he wasn't expecting anyone at that hour and asks who the visitor might be. The henchman stammers nervously, saying it's just a food delivery, but something about the situation seems very strange and suspicious. A delivery man wearing a red helmet enters the premises carrying a metal box typical of Chinese food deliveries. The criminals find it strange that someone would order Chinese food from a Chinese restaurant and begin to suspect everything. The delivery man introduces himself with a stutter, but his voice sounds familiar to the gang leader, who orders the intruder's helmet to be removed. Before they can react, the supposed delivery man throws the metal box, hitting one of the henchmen squarely in the face. The mysterious delivery man wastes no time and hits one of the henchmen squarely in the face with the metal box, knocking the man down. As the bandit flies off the road from the impact, the protagonist sarcastically announces, "The delivery has finally reached its destination." The other criminals are completely confused, not understanding why someone would deliver Chinese food to a Chinese restaurant. Realizing something is very wrong, the gang rises, surrounding the intruder, and the leader demands to know what this nonsense is all about. One of the henchmen holds the delivery box, but immediately finds it strange because the weight and metallic sound don't seem like food. Suddenly, the box opens, releasing a thick cloud of smoke. While the boss yells for them to rip the helmet off that bastard, a white cloud explodes, filling the area and causing the gangsters to cough desperately from the sudden burning sensation in their lungs. Protected by his helmet, the lawyer remains motionless and calm amidst the chaos, explaining that he had carefully prepared that disguise. The bandits fall to the ground in agony, and Hojul reveals that it's a special pepper spray used in military training. He coldly explains that it's not an ordinary gas, but a potent mixture designed to cause unbearable pain to anyone who breathes it. The sensation is described as having your throat cut repeatedly, and the pain is comparable to that of weapons of mass destruction. But the former assassin says he survived this chemical hell every day for years during his brutal training in the past. He remembers how he endured that daily torture, which made him resilient and able to operate even in those extreme conditions. Now walking calmly through the toxic smoke, he repeats his mantra of being invisible like air and fluid like water. His eyes are completely focused through the visor as he states that infiltrating with perfect disguises is his specialty. With most of the enemies incapacitated, the lawyer finally removes his helmet, revealing his identity with a mocking smile. One of the criminals who can still see widens his eyes upon recognizing the crazy lawyer who visited them earlier. Furious and incredulous, Joduchin asks how he got in there and what he thinks he's doing defying the entire gang all by himself. The boss regains his arrogance by pointing out that there are 9 experienced fighters against only one skinny, unarmed lawyer. But Hojul stares at him, and the chief asks if they really think numerical advantage matters now. The bandit tries to grab the lawyer, but he dodges with agility and throws another smoke bomb, blinding his opponent instantly. Taking advantage of his enemy's temporary blindness, Hojul begins to deliver precise and violent punches, taking them down one by one. Amidst the chaos and shouting, he explains that he is using advanced military tactics, and not just fighting in the streets like they are. Another henchman tries to hit him, but ends up punching air and is knocked out with a well-aimed kick to the chin by the protagonist. The lawyer moves quickly among them, using the environment to his advantage and causing the criminals to attack each other. Angry and confused, the bandits begin shouting insults, calling him a coward for using dirty tricks instead of fighting fair. Hojul laughs at their indignation and retorts that real criminals should be used to unfair and cowardly tactics. He lands a devastating punch to a henchman's stomach, causing him to spit blood and double over in pain on the restaurant floor. While taking down yet another opponent, the lawyer mocks them, saying that the only thing they know how to do is threaten and extort. The scene shows several fallen criminals groaning in pain, while the protagonist remains, standing without a single visible scratch. Joduchin watches in shock, unable to believe that a single man is decimating his entire gang in a matter of minutes. The boss tries to crawl away, but Hojul blocks his path with a sadistic smile, warning that the game isn't over yet. Trembling with fear, the gang leader tries to use his influence and money to bribe the lawyer and escape the imminent beating. But the protagonist ignores the offer and grabs him by the collar, preparing to deliver the final blow and end the job. With a cold and merciless look, Hojul warns that he doesn't want his dirty money, but rather that he pay for his crimes with blood. He raises his fist to deliver the coup de grace, while the bandit closes his eyes, bracing for the painful impact. But before the punch could land, the restaurant door burst open, interrupting the fight at the crucial moment. Everyone stares at the entrance, surprised by the new interruption, and the lawyer lets go of the curious boss to see who the intruder is. A group of armed police officers stormed the place, shouting for everyone to put their hands on their heads and surrender immediately. Hojul smiled contentedly, knowing it was all part of his bigger plan to lure the police in and arrest the entire gang red-handed. While dodging a chair blow, the lawyer pronounces the 3-year prison sentence that the criminal has just earned for that attack. Without wasting any time, he violently counterattacks, striking the aggressor in the face and demonstrating that justice is served immediately. The henchman tries to resist, but Hojul puts him in an arm lock and taunts him, saying that the skinny guy he underestimated will finish him off. Using the enemy's own strength, the protagonist throws him far away, yelling for the others to try and catch their flying companion. The impact on the ground is brutal, and he warns that extortion through threats results in heavy fines or payment with one's own blood. With a manic grin on his face, the lawyer realizes that those thugs have no idea of the danger they are facing. The former assassin begins to reveal the dark truth about the kind of hellish training that shaped his body and mind in the past. His expression contorts in pure sadism as he admits that he's been trained his whole life only to massacre people like them. In his memoirs, we see the daily struggle for survival, where each day was a test of endurance to avoid being kicked out of the club. He explains that years living in the underworld gave him a special gift for identifying predators and prey in a matter of seconds. His training taught him to be fickle in light, sometimes acting invisibly like the air itself, so as not to be detected. Other times it needs to flow and adapt like water, molding itself perfectly to any situation of danger or infiltration. This adaptability allows him to blend in anywhere, making his disguises and performances absolutely perfect. Behind the visor, his eyes gleam with the certainty that deceiving those criminals about the delivery was the easiest part of the plan. Back at the restaurant, the lawyer cracks his neck, complaining that so much studying law has left his body rusty for fighting. To humiliate him even further, he calls the gang leader by name and commands him with authority, as if he were a trained dog. The criminal obeys instinctively, but Hogel coldly reprimands him, asking who gave him permission to sit in the chair. Joe Duchin's hand trembles with hatred and nervousness as he realizes he's being made a fool of in front of all his subordinates. The bandit lets out an incredulous laugh, unable to comprehend the audacity and madness of that suicidal lawyer in his territory. Losing his patience, he yells furiously at his henchmen to stop hesitating and just grab that damned intruder once and for all. With the situation under control, the gang leader kneels submissively on the floor while the lawyer demands complete attention to his orders. Desperate, the bandit starts talking nonstop, even offering personal passwords, but Hogel asks only for the plain, unfiltered truth. The lawyer gets straight to the point, asking who's behind him, which leaves the criminal confused and scratching his head, not understanding. Annoyed by the bandit's attitude, the protagonist knocks him to the ground and tells him to stop answering with such cheerfulness and falsehood. With a serious and cynical look, Hogel admits that he won't believe a word he says, making the interrogation tense. Taking the criminal's unlocked cell phone, the lawyer makes an intrigued comment upon seeing what was open on the screen. The phone wallpaper reveals the bandit's peculiar taste, displaying a woman dressed as a bunny in a provocative pose. An expression of approval appears on the lawyer's face. He seems to have quite enjoyed the adult content he just found. Smiling mischievously, he remarks to himself that things are getting interesting and sensual with this new discovery. The day dawns, illuminating the office facade with colorful signs indicating that the long night of violence has come to an end. Ji-Hoo enters the room calling for the man and finds the lawyer sitting on the sofa amidst the usual office mess. The protagonist complains of body aches due to supposedly intense studying and wonders if the boy will ever call him brother. Completely ignoring the older man's drama, the young man simply announces his arrival, holding a branded cup of coffee in his hand. Hojul tries to impress by offering a specialty coffee mix, but is embarrassed to see that the boy brought his own fancy coffee. The boy politely declines the offer and tells the lawyer to enjoy his cheap coffee alone, leaving the man hanging. Suddenly becoming serious, Hoggle warns that the situation is more complicated than it seemed and asks the boy to listen carefully. The somber and sudden tone frightens the boy, but the lawyer insists it has to be this way because of the seriousness of what he has discovered. He reveals that the investigation led him to a strange clue about a chat room focused on stock investment tips. On screen, we see a group promising absurd profits of 500%, using photos of luxury cars to lure victims. Hoggle scoffs at the promise of easy money, saying that even he would like to earn that much money if it were true. On the cell phone screen, we see one of those classic, get-rich-quick scams with absurd guarantees of quick profits to lure victims. The lawyer laughs at the advertisement, asking if Jihu also wants to make a fortune like that, mocking the navy of those who fall for it. Jihu is shocked by the question and stares at the lawyer with wide eyes, unable to believe what he is suggesting so casually. The boy approaches the cell phone, staring intently at the screen, trying to understand if this is serious or just another joke. On the chat screen, we see several messages from desperate victims who lost everything, complaining about the scam they suffered in the room. One of the messages says that the person was scammed and is now in debt, revealing the genuine desperation behind the financial fraud. Another victim pleads for help, saying she lost all of her family's savings and doesn't know what to do to recover the money. Hojul explains that the scammers operate with virtual accounts and foreign IP addresses, which makes tracking them virtually impossible. He comments that many families have been ruined by this scheme and that the police can't do much to catch the culprits. The young man becomes enraged, asking what the police are doing while so many people lose everything to these unpunished criminals. Jihu stands up, indignant and determined, saying that they need to report this immediately so that something can be done. But the lawyer interrupts the boy's impulse with an enigmatic phrase, saying that it's never as simple as it seems. Hojul unfolds a large, hand-drawn organizational chart on the table, showing the structure of Joe Duchin's criminal organization. The boy looks at the childish drawing and asks mockingly if a kindergartner made those scribbles. Laughing loudly, the lawyer denies authorship of the crude drawing but confirms that it is the hierarchical structure of the gang they are investigating. He ignores the boy's artistic criticism and points to the center of the paper where it says, "Reading Room," with a large arrow. Hojul explains that scammers take advantage of the mindset of people desperate to get rich quickly. Then he crumples the paper tightly, demonstrating his frustration with the complexity of the scheme they are facing. Seriously, he reveals that thanks to the information from that crude drawing, he's already been able to identify who the bait used in the scam is. The boy asks what he means by bait, and the lawyer places his hand on his cell phone on the table. Hojul explains that he found the fisherman who lured Jiu's father into the chat room trap and reveals the person's profile. On the cell phone screen appears a photo of a beautiful woman whom the lawyer presents as the bait in the criminal scheme. The boy is surprised to recognize the woman's face and stammers in shock, asking if that's really possible. He looks at the lawyer and then stares back at his cell phone in shock, saying that this woman is famous, but not for scams. Jihu reveals that she is known online as Phantom, a mysterious figure whose true identity remains unknown. The young man explains that she completely hides her identity and nobody knows her real name, where she lives, or any personal details. He says that because of all this mystery, there are many rumors and urban legends about who she really is in real life. The image of the mysterious woman in a live broadcast appears on the screen, and the boy emphasizes that it is almost impossible to track her down. Jiu says that many tried to discover her identity, but not even former schoolmates or acquaintances came forward to talk. The boy is incredulous, questioning how on earth the lawyer managed to find all this out if she's such a well-protected digital ghost. The lawyer strikes a dramatic pose of misunderstood genius while explaining that he obtained this information thanks to his plan. He boasts that all of this is part of a larger strategy he devised to catch the big fish in the organization, Smiling arrogantly, Hojul says he plans to meet with her in person as soon as possible to move the case forward. Ji-hoo frowns suspiciously, thinking that the lawyer's sudden interest in meeting the beautiful woman wasn't purely professional. He remarks that the man's face looks far too animated for someone who is simply about to interrogate a dangerous suspect in a serious crime. Laughing awkwardly, the lawyer tries to change the subject, but his silly smile betrays that he really does have ulterior motives with the woman. Changing the subject, he returns to a serious tone, saying that regardless of the reason, meeting her is crucial to solving the mystery. The scene cuts to a bustling office where we see detectives and prosecutors working amidst piles of documents. A subordinate apologizes to Prosecutor Han Jung-goy, informing him that all the evidence against the defendant has mysteriously disappeared. The prosecutor adjusts his glasses, incredulous and furious, upon learning that the case, which seemed to be won, is now lost. Ji-hoo is incredulous to learn that the mysterious woman is actually a third-generation heiress to a multi-million-dollar conglomerate. He asks why someone so rich and powerful would get involved in a financial scam scheme out of desperation for money. On the phone screen, we see the image of Phantasma, again in her live stream, showing that she continues broadcasting normally. The lawyer replies that this is the suspicious part and the key to understanding the entire scam happening on the internet. Hojul explains that rumors say she hides her identity and only streams as a hobby since she's filthy rich. The profile of the mysterious woman is described as that of a sexy and cute goddess, a perfect combination to attract the attention of lonely men. The lawyer makes a psychopathic face when mentioning the nickname, Sex Demon, that some fans gave her online. Ji-hoo feels secondhand embarrassment and asks what the hell the lawyer is imagining with that scary, lecherous look on his face. Hojul quickly denies it, saying he wasn't imagining anything, but his face completely betrays his perverse fantasies. Ji-woo asks if she really is a goddess as they say, and the image focuses on the woman's sculpted body during the broadcast. The lawyer confirms that she is incredibly beautiful, almost unreal, and that there is no record or testimony from former colleagues about her. This lack of information about her past makes everything even more suspicious, as if she had appeared out of nowhere on the internet. Hojul concludes that it is merely a very well-crafted bait used by criminals to lure victims into the financial scam. The scammer's strategy is to use the image of a beautiful and unattainable woman to gain the trust of needy and lonely men. Ji-hoo finally understands the game and asks if the lawyer plans to use the same tactic to get closer to her and find out the truth. Smiling confidently, Hojul confirms that yes, and says he will use all his charm and cunning to get a date with her. The boy looks suspicious, thinking that the lawyer's real objective is simply to take advantage of the situation to see the pretty woman. The former assassin boasts that he likes sincere men who treat women like princesses, which is his specialty. But Ji-hoo cuts him off by reminding him that the woman has no intention of meeting anyone in person since she's a ghost. He emphasizes that she earns money through online donations and doesn't need to expose herself to the risk of real-life encounters. Ji-hoo is desperate at the idea of finding the woman immediately, because he knows she's super famous and inaccessible online. The lawyer jumps up, shouting that they have no choice but to try their luck and go after her right then and there. Back at the computer, we see the woman doing her live stream, but this time the focus is on her mysterious face and not on her physical attributes. Hojul asks in a challenging tone if the boy really thinks she would donate all that fortune out of pure kindness or charity. The former assassin claims that the exorbitant value of the donations is precisely what makes the whole thing so suspicious and worthy of investigation. He argues that if money wasn't the ultimate goal, why on earth would a millionaire heiress waste time doing live streams? Ji-hoo innocently replies that perhaps she donates everything she earns to charity, which makes the lawyer let out a mocking laugh. The image shows the woman smiling at the camera, while Hojul implies that nobody donates 100% of their profits without a reason. He adjusts his tie with an air of superiority, saying that there are many hidden motives behind that facade of a good girl. Ji was shocked to hear the lawyer's crazy plan to get a date with the internet celebrity and frowns. Hojil proudly explains that he spent the entire night awake devising that brilliant strategy to get closer to the target. The boy asks indignantly if he really stayed up all night just to come up with such a stupid and senseless idea. The lawyer defends himself by saying that sometimes the stupidest ideas are the ones that work best in desperate situations. He shows on his laptop screen a digital date winner coupon that he managed to win after much effort. Hojil celebrates as if he'd won the lottery, shouting that he'd finally won the prize of a one-day date with her. The boy reads on the screen that the lawyer invested all his savings of 5 million just to win that lottery. Jihu is stunned by the financial irresponsibility of the man who spent all his money on a dubious online gambling game. The lawyer grabs the boy by the shoulders and shakes him, shouting that every penny invested in that madness was worth it. With comical tears in his eyes, he says that now he finally has a real chance to come face to face with the mysterious woman. But suddenly his expression changes when he remembers a small detail that could ruin everything. Meanwhile, Hojil plans to use the perfect gentleman strategy to win the girl's heart and extract her secrets. He imagines himself as an elegant and sophisticated man cutting the meat onto her plate in a well-lit restaurant. In the fantasy, he uses sweet words, calling her a princess and saying that he cut the meat to the perfect size for her delicate lips. Back to reality, we see the fancy restaurant, which is actually a dive where the lawyer serves raw ground meat. Jihu observes the scene with embarrassment and asks if what's on the plate is steak tartare, given the sheer poverty of the supposedly luxurious meal. Suddenly, an authoritative voice calls out the lawyer's name, interrupting the couple's romantic and cringe-worthy moment. Hojul and prosecutor Han Jingwei stare intensely at each other, their faces almost touching in a silent and tense confrontation. The prosecutor demands to know what the lawyer did to manage to acquit a criminal against whom there was such compelling evidence. Hojil smiles mockingly and asks if the prosecutor wants to know his true identity, provoking the rival's curiosity. With an air of superiority, the lawyer adjusts his glasses and prepares to give a sarcastic and irritating response to the prosecutor. Meanwhile, on the phone, the gang leader complains that there's an annoying intruder in the restaurant disrupting his business. On the other end of the line, a calm and controlled voice instructs the criminal not to speak joyfully or show any emotion. The boss gets up with difficulty and bows respectfully to the phone, saying, "Wise sir," afraid of whoever is on the other end. The mysterious person orders him to sit down, and the bandit obeys immediately like a dog trained and terrified by its owner. But as soon as he sits down, the voice coldly reprimands him, asking who gave him permission to sit in the chair. The criminal stammers and asks who is speaking, because the voice sounds strangely familiar, and this makes him very nervous. The person on the other end laughs and says they have a friend who would be much more honest than the crook in that complicated situation. Looking at his cell phone, the gang leader sees the photo of the sexy bunny girl, and his eyes widen in shock and disbelief. He recognizes the person and shouts, asking if it's really him, the guy he knows from other times and past misunderstandings. The person confirms with a smile and says that from now on things are going to get very interesting and dangerous. Hojo freezes at the thought that if he starts investigating her connection to the gang leader or the investment room, she'll run away immediately. The former assassin imagines the ghost cutting ties and disappearing without a trace, frustrating his entire investigation. Back at the office, we see Jihu and Hoggle in an awkward moment of silence amidst the mess around them. The lawyer tries to calm the boy down, telling him not to worry about it, but Jihu asks why he shouldn't worry. With a confident smile, Hoggle states that he has already identified the decoy, that is, the location where it is hidden at that moment. The boy is surprised and asks how he managed to find out something that nobody else knew about the mysterious woman's location. The lawyer points to the laptop screen where the woman's live stream is paused and says that the answer was there all along. He explains that the clue wasn't in the scenery or the background of the video, but rather in the reflection of the sunglasses she was wearing. Hojul shows a close-up of the glasses reflecting the cityscape and says he was able to triangulate its exact position using this. The boy is amazed by the lawyer's deductive skills, which seem like something out of a spy movie or a professional detective story. The lawyer explains that he used the position of the setting sun reflected in the lenses and the silhouette of the neighboring buildings to find the location. He reveals that the woman is in a cafe in a neighboring town and that the name of the establishment is visible on the cup she is holding. Hogel zooms in on the image showing the Perrin coffee shop logo on the paper cup the woman was holding during the live stream. He explains that this coffee brand is regional and doesn't exist in Seoul, which drastically limited the search area to find it. The lawyer continues his detailed analysis, saying that he observed the level of coffee in the cup and the state of the melted ice inside it. He noticed that the ice was completely melted, and the glass was sweating, indicating that she had been there for at least an hour. Furthermore, he cross-referenced the transmission time information with the position of the shadows to confirm the exact time of the recording. Hogel triumphantly concludes that all these clues combined point to a single place and a single moment in time and space. The boy looks at the lawyer with admiration and fear, realizing that he is far more dangerous and intelligent than he appears to be. With a smile, Hogel says that now they have the exact location of the phantom and can finally confront her. The lawyer explains that when the investigation begins to see if she has any connection to Duchin, she will simply disappear off the map. The ghost will sever all ties immediately and flee far away, rendering any attempt to catch her futile. That's why Hogel insists they need to find her right now, before she suspects something and disappears forever. Ji-yu asks, confused, how they're going to do this since they don't know where she is, or how to reach her without raising suspicion. Smiling, the lawyer says the answer is simple, and there's no reason for so much concern, because he already has everything planned. He points to the computer and says they just need to go there and meet her in person, as if it were the easiest thing in the world. The boy is shocked and asks if he figured out her exact location just by looking at the laptop screen. Hogel proudly confirms that he analyzed the reflection in her sunglasses and was able to identify her location. It shows on the map that she is in a neighboring city near a specific coffee shop that only exists in that region. Furthermore, he used the position of the sun and the shadows of the buildings to confirm the exact time she was there doing the live stream. The lawyer also noted that the ice in her coffee cup was melted, indicating that she had been there for some time. Ji-hoo is impressed by the lawyer's quick and accurate deductions, who seems to possess the skills of an experienced detective. He asks if the lawyer isn't actually a lawyer killer, or something like that because of his strange abilities. Hogel laughs and says that this is just basic investigative methodology, and that anyone with a little brain would do the same. But the boy still has doubts and asks how they will approach her without her running away or calling security. The lawyer replies that they will enter unnoticed and act naturally so as not to arouse anyone's suspicion. He says he has a foolproof plan to make her feel comfortable and reveal her secrets without realizing it. Ji-hoo asks what this marvelous plan is, and the lawyer smiles mysteriously, saying it involves a lot of charm and elegance. In Hogel's imagination, he sees himself having dinner with the woman in a fancy place, chatting animatedly as if they were lovers, but in reality, he knows the plan is risky and that any mistake could ruin everything, including the chance of catching the culprit. Hogel starts acting strangely and strikes an effeminate pose, asking the boy if he doesn't intend to call him older brother. Ji-hoo looks at the lawyer with disdain, thinking he's pathetic, and wonders if he can really trust this crazy man. Suddenly, the lawyer turns around and says that the strategy is simple and that the first date with a woman can be awkward. But he assures that if the boy follows his instructions, everything will be all right, and the image shows the ghost laughing and having fun with someone. In Hogel's imagination, he is the mysterious man who wins the heart of the ghost. With his irresistible and mysterious charm, he finds himself bidding her farewell with a gallant gesture, and the woman seems charmed by the lawyer's enigmatic personality. Hogel says the key to success is acting like a gentleman and treating the woman as if she were the most precious thing in the world. He imagines himself saying catchy phrases like, "If we're meant to be together, we'll meet again in the future." But Ji-hoo cuts him off, saying that this kind of cheesy pickup line went out of style a long time ago and only works in soap operas. The boy says that women nowadays prefer sincere and straightforward men, not womanizers who play games. Hojul defends himself by saying that her ideal type is a man who treats her like a princess, and that he is perfect for that role. He boasts about his deep, masculine voice, saying she'll melt as soon as she hears the deep sound coming from his mouth. Ji-hoo rolls her eyes and says the lawyer is delusional if he thinks he's going to win over a woman of that caliber with cheap tricks. But Hojul insists he has a foolproof plan, and that he'll use a disguise to infiltrate the location where she's doing the live stream. He shows a picture of himself dressed as a woman and says that with a little makeup and padding he will be unrecognizable. Ji-hoo almost vomits when he sees the photo and yells that the lawyer is crazy if he thinks anyone will believe he's a woman. The boy says he looks like a monster and that he'll scare the ghost instead of winning her over with that ridiculous disguise. But Hojul doesn't give up and says he has other tricks up his sleeve, like dressing up as a ninja or becoming invisible like a ghost. Ji-hoo gives up arguing and tells the lawyer to do whatever he wants, but that he wants nothing to do with that crazy plan. The scene shifts to a dark alley where the ghost is doing her live stream surrounded by boxes and trash. The ghost approaches with a seductive wink and introduces herself as Hyo-rin, the new streamer. The bandits are surprised to see such a beautiful and young woman entering a warehouse full of dangerous men alone. One of the criminals comments that there aren't many female streamers nowadays, but she came to them of her own free will. He licks his lips with a mischievous smile as he considers the possibilities her presence there could bring to the group. The henchman calls her and compliments her beauty while observing her body with a predatory and disgusted gaze. Suddenly, the ghost transforms and begins to speak in a deep, mocking voice, frightening the bandits. She sarcastically asks how they knew she was famous, revealing that it's not quite what it seems. The criminals are confused and ask what's going on, not understanding how that woman's personality changed so quickly. The Phantom removes a wig, revealing short, dark hair underneath in a made-up male face. The bandits panic when they realize that the attractive woman was actually a man in disguise all along. They scream in shock and disgust upon discovering they were tricked by a transvestite who infiltrated their group. The disguised man laughs in their faces and asks if they didn't know he was famous for transforming himself into a woman. He boasts that he's the world's #1 at creating stars and fooling suckers with his perfect disguises. The criminals become furious and ask who he is and what he wants there among them, disrupting their business. The imposter responds mockingly, saying they should have realized sooner that something was wrong with the new streamer. He exaggerates the female voice again to mock the stupidity of the crooks who fell for the scam. One of the henchmen recognizes the man and asks if he was sent by boss Joe Duchin to test their loyalty. The imposter confirms with a thumbs up and says he should have mentioned that sooner to avoid embarrassment. He apologizes in a cute voice, pouting and acting like an innocent girl. The bandits are relieved to learn that he is a friend of the boss, but they are still disgusted by the bizarre situation. The live stream finally begins, and we see the Phantom in a comfortable room surrounded by soft lights and stuffed animals. Hojul enters the chat as the user, Hojula23, and begins to flatter the woman with exaggerated comments about her beauty. Ju observes everything awkwardly, saying that the lawyer is acting like a lovesick teenager desperate for attention. Suddenly, the woman notices the lawyer's comment and smiles, thanking him for the compliment in a sweet, angelic voice. Hojul celebrates the initial success of his plan and says he's now moving on to the next step, which is getting a real date. He sends a generous donation and asks if she would go out with him if he won the one-day date raffle. Ji-yu is shocked by the lawyer's audacity and asks if he really thinks he can buy a date with money. The woman replies that she would love to meet such a dedicated and generous fan, leaving the boy speechless with her response. Hojul laughs and says that money talks louder than anything else, and that his plan is working perfectly. He continues donating and flattering the woman until he finally wins the date raffle, surprising everyone in the chat. The woman congratulates the winner and says she is eager to meet him in person, arranging a place and time for the meeting. Ji-yu still can't believe what he's seeing and asks if the lawyer used some dirty trick to win the lottery. Hojil denies it, saying it was pure luck and skillful seduction, but his mischievous smile suggests there's more to it than meets the eye. The scene shifts to the day of the meeting, where we see the lawyer, dressed in his best suit, anxiously waiting for the woman. Ji-yu is hiding, observing everything from afar, ready to intervene if something goes wrong or the lawyer needs help. The Phantom arrives at the location, and to everyone's surprise, she is even more beautiful in person than in the photos and videos. Hojil approaches her confidently and offers his arm to guide her, acting like the perfect gentleman he had planned to be. The woman accepts the gesture and seems charmed by the lawyer's gallant attitude. Ji-hu watches the scene suspiciously, thinking that it's all too good to be true. He wonders if the woman is really who she says she is, or if she too is wearing a mask to hide her true secrets. Ji-hu looks suspiciously at the lawyer, thinking he's a complete idiot, and that his crazy plan is sure to fail. He imagines the lawyer dressed as a woman in a disastrous cosplay, and wonders who in their right mind would believe it. In Ji-yu's imagination, the female version of Hoggle is a vision of hell capable of causing nightmares in any normal person. The boy screams in terror, telling the demon to go away and begs the lawyer to abandon this horrible idea. But Hojil doesn't give up and tries to convince the boy that his disguise will be perfect and that everyone will love him like a true idol. Ji-hu insists that the lawyer is crazy and that being a woman is not as easy as he thinks, much less something that can be imitated like that. Hojil counters by saying that nowadays, with the right makeup, even a grandfather can transform into an attractive schoolgirl. He explains that with a little padding here and there, his body will be perfect, and no one will notice the difference. Ji-hu gives up arguing and tells the lawyer to do whatever he wants, but that he'll wash his hands of it if it goes wrong. The scene changes, and we see Hogil trying to balance in high heels and stumbling as he walks. He tries to imitate the Phantom's movements, but looks like a drunken penguin pacing back and forth in the room. Ji-hu watches the scene with her hand on her face, feeling such secondhand embarrassment that she can barely look at the lawyer. Hojil asks if he's walking normally, and the boy replies that he looks like a zombie with back pain. The lawyer tries to strike a sexy pose, but ends up falling face first to the ground, letting out a cry of pain and frustration. Ji-hu sighs and says that perhaps they should try another approach, because that one definitely isn't working. But Hojil gets up determined and says he won't give up, and that he'll train until he's perfect like the Phantom. He starts doing strange exercises and bizarre poses, trying to find his inner femininity. Ji-hu watches everything in disbelief and wonders if the lawyer hasn't hit his head, or if he's always been this crazy. Suddenly Hojil has a brilliant idea and says he's going to use a face-changing app to practice his expressions. He takes a selfie and shows it to the boy, asking if he looks good. But the image on the screen is terrifying. Suddenly a pink mug flies through the air, spilling hot coffee everywhere and causing a wet mess in the studio. The girl is caught off guard by the boiling liquid and ends up slipping backward while yelling a curse word from the sudden fright. The undercover lawyer rushes over, worried, asking if she burned herself and desperately trying to mop up the mess caused by the coffee. He runs around the makeshift studio looking for something dry and says he'll lend her some clothes from the company so she can change. Holding up a strange apron, he says it's all he has, but the girl stares at the tiny garment in utter confusion. With an innocent yet dangerous smile, the lawyer suggests it would be much better if she just took off all her wet clothes right there. Already dressed in an orange t-shirt, Hiren refuses help, shouting that she'd rather stay wet than listen to those strange things. The fake Unai smiles understandingly, saying that everyone acts shy at first, but that he'll fix that right now. Then he moves forward, trying to forcibly remove her clothes while the streamer screams desperately, saying she'll take them off herself. Chaos erupts as the two fight over the shirt, and Hiren panics, unsure how to react to the madness. Far away, Ji-hu tears her hair out in despair, realizing that if they discover Hogil as a man, the plan will fall apart. In the confusion of the fight, the lawyer's underwear is forcefully pulled, revealing skin that should have been hidden. The girl's expression instantly changes to pure shock upon seeing something totally unexpected on her supposed older sister's body. Trembling, she stammers, unable to believe what her eyes are seeing. and asks if it had been hidden there all along. Iorin stares seriously at the other girl's face and asks if she had been hiding that painful secret all this time. The lawyer realizes the mistake but reacts quickly, feigning sadness, and saying he didn't want to show it precisely because he was ashamed. His shoulder is revealed to be covered in scars from ancient battles, and the girl asks in horror the origin of so many marks on his skin. With a poetic eye, he spontaneously invents a dramatic story, calling the marks canvases painted by a bitter life. The lie sticks so well that the girl throws herself to the ground, hugging him and crying with apology for judging him without knowing the pain. A moved Hyorin expresses her gratitude for the warm welcome, while the cunning lawyer realizes his cover was saved by a hair's breadth. Jihu hears the heavy breathing through the earpiece and asks the man to calm down because he is fogging the microphone with so much noise. At the police station, the gang leader shouts furiously, claiming he is the real victim, and brandishes the handcuffs, indignant at the unjust arrest. He points to his swollen eyes as proof of the assault and demands that his boss be brought in immediately, cursing the guard officer. The door opens and the bandit yells, asking why the delay, thinking his lawyer has finally arrived to save him. An elegant man in a suit enters the room, apologizing for being late and adjusting his tie with a calmness that contrasts sharply with the chaos. The criminal froze instantly upon recognizing that face. It wasn't his lawyer, but the dreaded prosecutor Han Zhong, I himself. Already at the interrogation table, the prosecutor ignores his shock and coldly asks the criminal to explain the circumstances of the case. Joe Duchin confesses that he was beaten up by a lawyer and says he doesn't know if the man took the wrong medication to become so crazy. The prosecutor flips through the documents, intrigued by the absurd story of a lawyer who fights like a professional and questions the facts. The mobster shudders at the memory of the scene and confirms that the man is too good at fighting, something totally abnormal for someone in that profession. With tears in his eyes, he recounts that it took the man less than 3 minutes to take down a dozen of his men, as if they were nothing. The prosecutor is left pondering, wondering what the purpose of a lawyer with such combat skills getting involved in this would be. He pulls a photo from inside the file, sensing that something much bigger and more dangerous is hidden behind that strange case. The image reveals the protagonist smiling over the bodies of the defeated bandits, and the prosecutor faces the evidence with great seriousness. Adjusting his glasses, he mutters to himself, wondering what on earth that mysterious man is really planning. Back in the hotel room, the atmosphere changes completely, and we see the protagonist doing a ridiculous little dance to try and cheer the girl up. He awkwardly swings his hips, claiming it's the latest trend, and tries to convince the streamer to join in the fun. But Iron watches everything with secondhand embarrassment and warns that if they do that on the live stream, they'll receive refund requests from subscribers. Trying to change the subject, the lawyer suggests showing that reaction to the company's CEO, but the girl's face changes instantly. She turns pale and warns in a trembling voice never to mess with the boss, because he is a terrifying person. Concerned about his reaction, the girl asks what's happening and calls him sister. Trying to understand his sudden fear, the young woman hugs her own body and trembles as she wonders what kind of monster this CEO is, capable of causing them so much terror. His eyes widen as he realizes that the existence of a gang leader operating a legitimate business is impossible. Hyorin reveals that the man is no ordinary businessman, as he arrived in Korea about 10 years ago from a dark past. The criminal laundered his identity and opened the entertainment company, but his story begins much earlier on another continent. It all began in the dangerous Bronx area of the United States, a place so violent that even the police didn't dare set foot there. The neighborhood was controlled with an iron fist by a ruthless gang known in the underworld as the Vipers. That man was born with the seed of evil and fit perfectly into the brutal violence of that organization. It didn't take long for him to rise through the criminal ranks and take the place of absolute leader of the Vipers. The image shows a tattooed and armed young man atop the wall, revealing that he was only 15 years old at the time. It's unbelievable to think that a teenager managed to take control of an entire gang in the blink of an eye. After that, his ambition didn't stop and he quickly absorbed neighboring territories, expanding his empire of fear. With brutal tactics, he transformed the Vipers into the largest and most dangerous gang in the entire American state. The story becomes even more macabre when it mentions KD, the right-hand man who served the boss with absolute and blind loyalty. The loyal subordinate was found dead in a pool of blood, his body riddled with 46 bullet holes. KD was the type of loyal member who would do anything for the organization and would even betray his own family for the boss. The organization collapsed, believing it was a murder committed by a rival gang. But the terrifying truth is that the killer was not an enemy, but rather the very boss he had served his entire life. With a crazed expression, the leader explained that the reason for the death was simply because the subordinate was already dead to him. Back in the present, we see the defendant in court as the judge asks if he has any final words. Defendant number 214 smiles disturbingly and comments that the orange uniform is nice, leaving everyone confused. The shocked judge asks if he has any idea where he is, but the maniac only replies that he was curious about something. With an insane expression, he sticks his tongue out, saying he wants to know what it feels like to wear that outfit. Suddenly, he bites his own tongue with brute force, spurting blood and causing total panic in the courtroom. The guards run desperately, shouting for an ambulance and trying to stop the bleeding to keep the defendant alive. At the hospital, doctors report that the patient has not yet regained consciousness and remains in serious condition. Outside, the police officers discuss the madness of attempting suicide in court to prove why he was the leader of the Vipers. But when they look inside the room, they realize the bed is empty and the handcuffs have been mysteriously opened. Panic grips the guards, who can't understand how that man escaped right under their noses. As they approached the open window, they were incredulous, considering that the fugitive might have jumped from up there. Looking down, we see a car with its roof destroyed, confirming that he jumped from a deadly height from the 8th floor. Bloody footprints leading away from the wreckage show that he survived the fall and vanished into thin air soon after. The narration recounts how he evaded surveillance and fled to Korea using the stolen identity of an unfortunate victim. After altering his face with plastic surgery, he resumed his activities and created an even larger criminal organization. Hyorin reveals that this monster is the current CEO of the company and that the streamer agency only serves to raise funds. The lawyer is shocked, wondering if his own boss goes around telling such an absurd and dangerous story. The girl explains that everyone around him knows the truth, but that this information never leaks to the outside world. Hojo frowned, not understanding how such a big secret could be kept for so long without anyone saying anything. The image cuts to the villain saying that anyone is free to talk about him if they want, but he says that only happens because those who talk too much end up dead. The psychological terror is so great that the death threat extends to the entire family of anyone who dares to speak about his past. Hyorin admits that she told him everything because she feels her fate is already sealed and that she will die at his hands anyway someday. But she smiles sweetly, saying that she trusts her supposed older sister and doesn't mind sharing the secret with her. Changing the subject, the girl announces that she invented an emergency signal to use when the dreaded boss shows up. The #1 rule of survival is never to look the CEO in the eye, because nobody knows the horror that might follow. She firmly gripped the lawyer's shoulders, insisting that he pay close attention and memorize the security plan. The secret signal is a heart-shaped gesture with the fingers, something that seems cute, but in that situation will mean mortal danger. Hyorin warns with complete seriousness that as soon as she makes that gesture, her sister must drop everything and run away immediately. Her face shows pure concern and affection as she pleads for the escape plan to be followed to the letter. Hojel stares at the girl, thinking how strange and naive she is for worrying so much about someone she just met. The lawyer sweated cold beneath his disguise, mentally questioning whether he should end it all now or keep up the charade. Suddenly, sharp knocks on the door interrupt his conflicting thoughts and bring tension back to the room. Hyorin is startled by the unexpected noise and stares at the cushion where she heard the sound, her eyes wide with fear. Outside, shouting can be heard as the henchmen rush to clean up and hide everything in great haste and desperation. The girl peers through the crack, trembling as she imagines that all the tension among the bandits can only mean that the boss has arrived. The door bursts open, and a voice commands them to wait, revealing a male figure in a suit standing in the doorway. Iron turns pale and lets out a shocked exclamation upon recognizing the damned man who just invaded the hideout. To everyone's surprise, it's not the gang leader but rather prosecutor Han Zhong, why being led by the nervous thugs. The prosecutor walks calmly, observing that the place is excessively clean, without a single trace of dust. Han adjusts his glasses and announces that he's come looking for someone specific, while Hyorin hides in panic. Han claims he's there looking for a specific person, and the criminal right behind him promises to turn everything upside down to find whoever he wants. Suddenly, his eyes fix on something suspicious, as he notices a strange movement. The man spots the woman in the red hood, trying to sneak away, and authoritatively orders her to stop where she is.